Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mack Story.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. Today, we continue my series on my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, the 5 components for building high-performance teams. So if you started with me back on episode 179, you know today's episode is part 11 of 30, where I'll be focusing on Chapter 11. Chapter 11 is titled, Develop High-Impact Individuals. So if you remember back to Chapter 6, the transformation equation, and the 5 components, we're about halfway through the first component, leadership development. And remember, leadership development, the leadership development component is kind of split into 2 pieces, self-development, development of self, and development of others. So now in this chapter, what I want to share with you is about developing high-impact individuals. It's the way you develop yourself, but it's also, remember this book, I wrote it for the top leader, the CEO, the business owner, as a roadmap and a guide how to transform their culture. So in this chapter, I'm teaching them just a little bit about developing high-impact individuals, why it's important, and how to do it. And I introduced my book, Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines. So this chapter actually has an entire book that supports it. So if you want to do what's actually in this chapter, check out Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines. I've already got a 30-part episode on that book, a 30-part series on that book, and it actually starts at episode number 65. So if you want to dive into that content, jump back to 165 and you can listen to a 30-part series on that, or go grab the book on audio, paperback, whichever way you like to read it, ebook. But anyway, let's get started today on this chapter, Develop High-Impact Individuals. So I want to start off with a quote by Charles Koch. He says, "We understand that talented people with bad values can do far more damage to a company than virtuous people with inferior talents." So what he's saying is someone with a lot of talent but bad values are going to do a lot of damage in your company. If you're a leader, you already know exactly what he's talking about. He's also saying that virtuous people with high degree of character with inferior talents can actually do a lot of good for your company. So relative to this chapter, I want to talk about this component right here. Personal development is the foundation of leadership development. See, a lot of people don't understand the personal growth component. I always talk about, if you hear me talk a lot or hear me speak, people ask me what I do. I speak, teach, and write about personal growth and leadership development. That's why. Personal growth is the foundation of leadership development, or personal development is the foundation of leadership development, whichever word you want to use. That's why we have to focus on self. So if you want to develop a team of high-impact people, you've got to develop high-impact individuals. Because each individual on your team must choose to change their values just as you must choose to change your own. So you have to develop those people. You have to motivate and inspire them. You have to model. You, the top leader, and any other leaders have to model what you want to see in the frontline folks. So everybody needs to go through the book that I'm referencing here in this chapter. At the end of the chapter, I have a link to it, Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines. That book is full of 30 chapters on how to become a high-impact individual. It's full of values and principles And again, I wrote that book for the entry-level frontline workforce. But I've had high-level leaders, VPs, CEOs read that book and get a lot of value. And the reason is it's full of principles. But again, I wrote it for the blue-collar workforce. But a lot of people get value. I've had even white-collar people read that book, get a lot of value out of it. I've had leaders read it and want their teenagers to read it, male and female, because it's full of principles and values, again, on how to become a high-impact individual. That's the foundation. If you want to build a high-performance team, you've got to be able to attract and retain high-impact individuals, but you also have to be able to develop those people you already have on your team. And when you get a high-impact individual, you've got to be able to elevate and raise that person. So you can't transform the culture of your organization by yourself, but you must begin the cultural transformation within yourself. Rhea and I, if you've listened to me long enough, you know that in 2013 we had the privilege of going to the country of Guatemala with John Maxwell. And there was 150 of us joined him down there. 150 of us joined him down there. And our whole mission was to kick off and initiate the cultural transformation of the entire nation. And the underlying principle, they had T-shirts and slogans all over the place that said this. This was the underlying principle. Transformation begins with me. Transformation begins with me. That's why in this section on leadership development, we start out really when we talk about developing people, we'd start out with developing the individual. Regardless of how many times you've heard, there's no I in team. I've heard that so many times, I still hear it. There's no I in team. You must understand there are multiple I's on every team. So what I mean is, if your team is made up of 10 people, there are 10 individuals. Notice individuals begins with an I. There are 10 individuals on your team. If your team's made up of 10,000 people, there are 10,000 individuals on your team. That's kind of obvious. But for some reason, people say there is no I in team. Every single person on that team is an I. If you want the team to be right, each individual has to be right. And when I say right, I mean relative to character. If you want a high-performance team, they got to have a high degree of competency and a high degree of character. They got to have that combination. Each team member is an I and will always be an I. A team is simply a group of individuals. That's all a team is. It's a group of individuals. When you put a group of people together, you don't take away the individual. You can't take the individual out of each person and mold them into one person. They're still a group of individuals. I always tell people, you can imagine this, how important the I is, the individual on a team. Let's say you've got a well-oiled team functioning, they're functioning like a well-oiled machine. They're making it happen. And you bring in a new team member, an individual who doesn't fit. Or you may have been on a team when someone else brought in this individual to the team and they don't fit. How disruptive is it to the team? Highly disruptive. And the team may not ever function until that individual is removed from the team, because they may just simply not fit. If they don't fit, it means the character and the competency. Most often, it's purely the character. You could also see the same type team operating like a well-oiled machine, and a new person is added to the team who has a high degree of competency, who has a high degree of character, which usually means they're going to come in and not act like they know anything, and they're going to come in and try to learn everything and contribute. Those people walk in, and the team just keeps on trucking. They have a little more horsepower now. That's what happens when you add a high-impact individual to a high-performance team. It's just automatic. Everybody fits. They click. They don't need any training. Think of that. If you bring together, you're going to form a team of 5 people. You bring together 5 high-impact individuals. They have a high degree of character. a high degree of competency relative to the mission. You don't have to go out and do rope courses. You don't have to catch somebody falling off a table. You don't have to do team building, because these individuals are ready to accomplish the mission. All you have to do is give them a mission. Now, you can bring 5 individuals together who have tremendous competency but poor character, or mediocre competency and poor character. You can bring these people together, and mainly it's the poor character is the problem. You bring 5 people together with poor character, you can go do as many team building events as you want. It's not going to change their character. You've got to focus on the individual. You've got to get the individual to buy into changing their values. They may go to a team training and climb some ropes and fall off some tables and do these team building exercises. Nothing wrong with that stuff. It's good stuff. It's great for relationship building, but it's not good for character transformation. You got to do that groundwork first, and that's what this chapter is talking about relative to building a high-performance team. Is you have to build high-performance individuals, and again, I referenced the resource for doing that specifically. Because without high-impact individuals, there won't be a high-performance team. It ain't possible. Because there is an I in team, a bunch of I's, right? We talked about that. And John Maxwell said it best. He says, when you equip people, you teach them how to do a job. When you develop them, you are helping them to improve as individuals. You see, you need to equip people. You need to teach them how to do a job. That's competency type stuff. You got to do that. It's required. But developing people is not required. Helping them improve as individuals in life, at home, and at work, that's not required. But that's what high-impact leaders do. Leaders who want to do exactly what this book is talking about. Remember, this entire book, if you put it in one line, the one line is, this book teaches you how to become a sought-after employer of choice. If you want to become a sought-after employer of choice, you help people improve as individuals. Help them get better results at work and at home. You do that, and you're going to attract top talent. And you're going to retain top talent. They still may go because those people are exceptional. And when you build an exceptional team, some of those people are going to go. They're going to start their own businesses. They're going to run someone else's business. But what they're doing while they're in your business, they're performing at a high level. And they're also helping you grow and develop everyone else around them. So when if they do step away, or they step up in one organization, or they move to a different division or a different facility in another state in the same organization, they may grow in the same organization but leave your team. If that happens, they've helped you fill the pipeline. You're just a leadership building factory. You're just building leaders, one right after the other, and you got a team of people helping you do it. But you can't do it until you build high performance individuals. And you can't really do that. You have to motivate and inspire them to grow and develop themselves. But you got to provide the resources, the time, and most importantly, a model of what it looks like in other people. So every single person who gets on board, who chooses to grow and develop themselves, is helping you build and develop this high-performance team that's going to allow you to become a sought-after employer of choice. One more time. Cultural transformation is about developing and improving individuals. I bet I said that a lot this entire podcast because I want it to stick. Personal development is the foundation of leadership development. And I mentioned it in the past. Character development equals leadership development. They're the same thing. When you're talking about high impact leadership, some people call it servant leadership. Whatever you call it, character development equals leadership development. Good friend of mine, I'm sure I've mentioned him before. Amir Ganad, tremendous individual, high level of character. I got a quote here by Amir. He says, if enough people declare themselves individually the cause of the current culture and unconditionally commit to a different behavior, we can shift the culture instantly. And that applies in an organization. It applies in a community, in a family, in society as a whole. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on out in the world these days. And see, the thing about this is it can go either way. A culture can shift instantly. All that has to happen is what the people decide, which values they choose to align their behavior with. It can go either way. What we're talking about here is a culture in a company. So what you're trying to do as a leader, you're trying to teach people the values that you want to get everyone who wants to be a part of the mission to align behind this set of values. Again, most times, companies don't do any training and development like this. So everybody just brings whoever they are to work, and they try to mix it in a pot and hope it comes out good. But when you start down this path, you're actually teaching the values. This is who we are. This is what we want to be about. And the leaders, that's why the leaders have to model it, because when the leaders start modeling it, it proves to everyone watching, this is for real. This is who we're becoming. And it allows those leaders to attract and retain people who value these type principles. Those who don't, they're either going to leave or they're going to get left. You can't make a team member become irrelevant when you start down this path. They can only choose to become irrelevant. It's up to them. If they don't get on board, they're choosing to become irrelevant, because now a leader somewhere is saying, this is who we are and this is where we're going. You want to make it happen? Come on, let's go. If you don't, we're going to miss you. About that simple. But you don't say that on the front end. Remember, you make sure everybody has a chance, especially like this chapter in the book I'm talking about, Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines. You got to give people a chance. Some people may not be on board, but you may have never done training and development yet. They don't know what to be on board with. So you got to give them a chance to go through some of this content, go through some book studies, go through some trainings, however you want to introduce it. And the key, again, if the leaders are not modeling it, we can't blame the people for not being on board, because there ain't nothing to be on board with. If the leaders are not modeling it, it ain't for real. That's why it starts at the top. It starts with leadership development. And again, we're building up here as we go through the remainder of the second half of this leadership development component of the transformation equation. But we start with self, and then we're going to go to working with teams effectively, and then leading others. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen, or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mack Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mack's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.